This is Edge of the Box, a podcast brought to you by WhoScored.com.
Welcome to the Edge of the Box podcast brought to you by WhoScored.com in association with BetVictor. I'm your host this week, George Elek, standing in for Dan Bardell. The hosts might have changed, but the guests are still the same, and I'm joined by Martin Laurence from WhoScored and journalist Jonathan Wilson. We come here off the back of an international break. I think everyone's very excited to have Premier League football back. Martin, we saw England's 18-match winning streak at Wembley in qualifiers, both World Cup and European Championship qualifiers, ended in a 1-1 draw against Hungary. Any thoughts? I mean, I think the glaring thing for maybe yourself and maybe myself was the early substitution in the game made by Gareth Southgate.
Yeah, I did find Grealish's withdrawal baffling, just because the system clearly hadn't worked. Mount and Foden were both relatively anonymous, and Grealish did look like the player that was, as much as he wasn't like near his best, he was the player that was making small things happen or had the game in England's favour. And I thought as soon as he went off, just nothing really happened. Saka didn't really have the impact that you'd have wanted, but then he went in at right wing back. I thought that was a strange decision. So yeah, nothing really paid off. It wasn't a great sort of advert for the idea of Foden and Mount starting in midfield with the 2-8s. Wasn't a great start for that, but hopefully it's not something that gets written off straight away. But yeah, it wasn't the most fun watch.
I mean, as somebody who watches a fair bit of League Two football, it was good to see a League Two striker playing up front for England on the day. Harry Kane did not look at his best. But Jonathan, the Nations League, I think, was a shining light, I guess, of the international break this week. What did you make of it?
I didn't watch the third place playoff, but the three games I did see were all brilliant. They were really good games. And I think that shows the value of that as a competition. That while other teams are sort of slogging through these slightly dull qualifiers, often against teams who are of a very different level, which means that there's a dynamic to the football that's, I think, not particularly healthy, not particularly conducive to either entertainment or good football. You see the value of teams of roughly the same level playing against each other. And that's really, I mean, that's why I wouldn't be too bothered by England's failure to beat Hungary or play well against Hungary. I've been doing a lot of research on the 66 World Cup recently, and you see in the build-up to that a very similar response from media and fans to what we've seen around this England. They're too stodgy, they don't attack enough, haven't got enough creativity. But it's really difficult to attack against teams who sit deep against you. And actually, in terms of winning the competition, as long as you can get away with it doesn't really matter. There was a line of Alf Ramsey's after England had put 8 past Northern Ireland and against Switzerland, so saying that this is irrelevant. What matters is can we scrap it out against a Uruguay, an Argentina, a Portugal, a West Germany. As long as you get through the groups, you don't have to play well in them. Just do enough to get through, and then is when it matters. And England have taken 4 points. If Hungary 4 points off Poland, they will qualify. It's okay. It's fine.
I was at Wembley on Tuesday night, and I found it quite amusing how a lot of the fans around me, including my old man sitting to my right, were getting very frustrated with Mings and Stones for knocking the ball around the back. And then Jordan Henderson came on with 20 minutes to go and decided to be that guy who was going to try and pass the ball forward at every opportunity and hit about 6 balls straight through to the goalkeeper. It's not easy just to get the ball forward against a low block, as I think people should by now realise. A couple of other interesting moments in international break. We saw Scotland get a couple of really important last gasp goals to improve their qualification chances, and Ronaldo scored his 10th international hat-trick against the mighty Luxembourg. And on that subject, we're going to kick off this week's show with a look at WhoScored's best new signing 11, because Martin, presumably CR7 must make his way in.
You'd have thought so, maybe. Well, spoiler alert, no, he doesn't. We'll come on to it. But yeah, I'll go through the 11, and it starts with a vindication really for Arsenal's transfer business. A lot of criticism there in the summer, but now that they've sort of settled down a bit, obviously had a tough start. Even that Brentford game wasn't an easy fixture. They were awful, don't get me wrong, but not an easy start. And then to play Chelsea and City was always going to be a difficult start, but they've settled down without being spectacular by any means. I thought they were pretty dominated by Brighton last time out and quite fortunate in that game, but another clean sheet, and that's where we start. Aaron Ramsdale is the goalkeeper. Obviously, not a lot of competition. He basically beats Jose Sa to the spot in goal, but has been good. And I think he was one of the main ones that came in for criticism, mainly around that transfer fee as much as anything. But the fact that he's come in so early, looked stable to now, looks a character as well. He's certainly won over a lot of Arsenal fans early doors and played well. So he's in goal. Tomiyasu is the right back, ahead of the likes of Emerson Royale at Spurs. And Ben White has actually now come in at centre-back after a good game against his former club. He comes in at centre-back, had a tough start, got the virus, didn't he? But has come back a lot stronger now that he's partnered with Gabriel, and that partnership looks like it's got some legs. He's partnered by Varane at the back, who's obviously now injured. That's a talking point ahead of this weekend. And then the left back, who I've been really impressed by, is Mark Cucurella at Brighton. Been very, very good. Looks like a coup already. The midfield four, and Jonathan will definitely take umbrage with the fact that it's a 4-4-2. Luckily, Dan's not here this week, but Andros Townsend is on the right. Conor Gallagher in midfield, Demarai Gray on the left, and the shoehorning Jack Grealish into midfield, basically, because there is so little competition in that area of the pitch. Very few central midfield signings in the summer. Actually, they were all basically made by Watford, who made about 12, and none of those have been particularly strong. So we've got Grealish in central midfield alongside Conor Gallagher. Not the most defensive protection there, but there we go. And up front, it is not Ronaldo, it is Lukaku, which you would expect, but it is now Hwang Hee-chan. After an excellent game against Newcastle, looks like he's formed a nice partnership early doors with Raul Jimenez. So he just edges Ronaldo to the spot up front with a rating of 7.13 to Ronaldo's 7.08. So very tight, but Hwang gets the nod.
Hwang better than Ronaldo. Quote.
There you go.
From Martin Laurence,
I'm fine with
Thursday,
it.
14th of October. Yeah. Cristiano Ronaldo Twitter is going to enjoy that one. Jonathan, as Martin said, I mean, the Gallagher-Ronaldo midfield duo, I mean, that should work in the Premier League, shouldn't it?
The Gallagher-Grealish midfield duo?
Sorry, Gallagher-Grealish, yeah.
No. I mean, it was difficult to find more defensive midfield. So I ended up doing a horrible fudge with getting Odegaard and Willock in there. Who feel like a bit of a cheat, given they were both on loan and then joined. But just to try and get a bit of stability, to at least have three men in there. So yeah, why is nobody signing holding midfielders? What's wrong with people?
I know. For what it's worth,
sorry,
Juraj Kucka was the closest, but a long, long way back in terms of his rating. So could have put him in for more tactical balance, but yeah, not exactly inspiring.
Any other grievances, Jonathan? Anything else you'd like to take umbrage with?
No. I think it's relatively good for one of Martin's teams. Well done.
Thank you very much.
Arsenal fans delighted. Jonathan happy as well. It's a miracle team. On then to the first game of the weekend that we're going to focus on here, and it is Watford who host Liverpool in Saturday's early kickoff. And we've got to start this one with a conversation around the managerial change that took place, shockingly, at Watford. The first manager to be sacked was Xisco Munoz. I don't think many people were too surprised by that. 7 points from 7 games and 14th place may on paper look like a harsh decision, but a fair few Watford fans, Jonathan, suggesting this was the right decision and a decision that they wanted to be made.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those decisions that's simultaneously shocking and not shocking, in that nothing Watford do managers is ever shocking. But it's not just it's 7 points from 7 games. It's that they probably should have beaten Newcastle, and they had a goal very harshly disallowed at Leeds. Okay, in a game which they're largely outplayed. So say they'd beaten Newcastle rather than drawing, and say they'd drawn at Leeds rather than losing, they'd suddenly have 10 points. And that would have them 11th, level with Arsenal and Villa. So the idea that suddenly, panic station seems very odd. But I take the point that Watford fans make that the football hasn't been particularly inspiring. That the phrase used in the dismissal statement was negative trend, and perhaps there has been a negative trend. It's very difficult when you don't watch teams live or don't watch the full 90 minutes of games to pick that up. But yeah, from an outsider's point of view, it seems very harsh. I guess they knew they could get Ranieri. I mean, that's the other thing I think Watford do well. They don't sack a manager, then sort of leave it to fester for a month. They know who's coming in. So I don't know. I mean, Ranieri, his record is I think mixed in recent years. Some outstanding successes, some glaring failures, and he's got an absolutely brutally tough start. And after Liverpool, he's got Everton, Southampton, Arsenal, Manchester United, Leicester, Chelsea, City. So that's 8 games which he could play pretty well and end up with sort of 3, 4, 5 points. So it's they could easily have you sort of feel they could have a third manager in by Christmas.
I mean, I saw a fair bit of Watford last season, and they started their campaign in the Championship with Vladimir Ivic, who was a pretty scary looking bloke who played pretty defensive-minded football, who fell out with Troy Deeney very early on in the season. And Xisco Munoz came in with this huge grin, and it was just the whole atmosphere at Watford, just by having this kind of smiley, happy guy, just changed immediately. And it felt like the shackles were off. And even though they went on this incredible run in the back end of the season and their defensive record was very good, it never really felt like it was much of Munoz's tactical acumen. It was more just the fact that they had a selection of Premier League quality players who were given the license to go out and perform the way that they wanted to. And I've even had Watford fans in the last couple of weeks say to me that there's no doubt that Ivic is probably a better coach and a better tactician, but for what they needed last season, given their qualities, the technical qualities of certain players, Ismaila Sarr being the key one, and they just needed somebody who wasn't going to concentrate on the defensive side of things. And now I guess the task has changed. I was personally a little bit surprised it took them this long to do it. I thought even though Munoz had got them promoted, I thought knowing Watford, it might be a case where they say, thank you very much for doing what you were hired to do. Let's go and find someone now. On Ranieri, Martin, the last time we saw him in the Premier League was at Fulham, where he was employed to do a very similar job when he took over from Slavica Kanovic about this stage of the season after a poor start, and he failed to get much of a reaction. But since then, he did an okay job at Roma and did a really impressive job at Sampdoria as well, where he took over when they were very lowly in Serie A, pushed them away, and then in the second season had a very good finish as well. So, I mean, what do we know about those sides? What can we expect from Ranieri's Watford?
There was an interesting point that Illich was maybe a better coach defensively, and certainly Watford hadn't really adapted their game at the start of the season. They were still looking to pass out from the back, which they didn't really have the players to do at this level. Weren't really, as much as Sarr's looked bright, they weren't really making the most of his threat on the counter as much as maybe they could have. I think finding a consistency in the selection was always going to be difficult after the summer that they had and that they tend to have, where they chop and change every year. So especially in midfield, signed so many midfielders. They lost Hughes, obviously, who it was up to him not to sign a new contract, but generally settled with Chalobah in midfield as well last season. But they've just chopped and changed and not found a balance quickly enough, and they're just not playing coherent football. So he needs to find some sort of consistency in that selection. Maybe he might look to go back to a 4-4-2 like he deployed so well at Leicester. Just shore things up. And again, when you don't have a squad that's riddled with quality, you need to do the basics right. And set pieces, they've been really, really poor at both ends. They've actually got the lowest XG from set pieces. And that can be such a sort of asset to teams that are generally in a relegation battle, but they're not making the most of them at all. And they've got the third highest XG against from set pieces. So set pieces they need to sort out. Discipline. They're making 3 more fouls per game than any other team, 14.6 per game. Next highest is 11.6. So that sort of points towards a lack of organisation, some sort of rash tackles. Kuchka maybe responsible for quite a lot of that. And I think him and Sissoko isn't really a sort of platform that works particularly well. Pushing Sissoko on a little bit more might help, and bringing in a bit more stability to that midfield. So there's a lot to do. But he does have players. He's got players there. There's certainly in attack. There's a formula there that can work if he can. Dennis has looked bright, a bit sort of hit and miss, but they've got João Pedro to come back in. He's an exciting player. Could form a 2 up front, I think, with Josh King, which might work. And yeah, they need to continue to get the best out of Ismaila Sarr, but he is the only player to have scored for Watford since that sort of first half against Villa, when they were very good, but Villa were very, very bad. So yeah, they need to find goals across the pitch. So quite a lot that he needs to work on, really.
Yeah, fair bit. 69 years old, Claudio Ranieri now. His Sampdoria team ranked very high in all the pressing metrics, and given how at times Watford under Munoz this season look to kind of sit in and drop deep. I think we're going to see a bit of a change of style, certainly, if Ranieri looks to replicate that kind of approach. Let's talk about Liverpool now. And Jonathan, if we were to make, or if you were to make a list of the best players in the world right now, we're coming towards Ballon d'Or season, which looks at the year retrospectively, but right now, the best players in the world, where do you think Mo Salah would rank?
I think pretty highly among the forwards. I think the start of this season's been absolutely exceptional. That goal, the assist and then the goal against City were both absolutely brilliant moments. So I don't know. I don't really like the Ballon d'Or as a concept, but it's football's about the team. It's not about individuals.
It shocks me.
Individual competitions are, let's just make it clear, are not worth anything. But just in our minds, we can talk about the best player in the world, even though there's no definitive answer. Salah has to be.
If I was setting up a new MLS franchise with unlimited budget and I could buy any sort of 11 players, he'd probably be my first choice to play on the right.
That's a great way of saying he's the best player in the world. I like it. Martin, to the Who Scored rankings, agree with that in terms of his form?
Well, he's clear in the Premier League, best in the Premier League so far by some distance. He's not actually the best in Europe's top 5 leagues according to our ratings. A certain Karim Benzema overlooked in that regard. So Salah is second for what it's worth, but Karim Benzema has had a sensational start to the season. 9 goals and 7 assists, so he's top of the goals and assist charts across Europe's top 5 leagues. Obviously, Kane managed that in the Premier League last season, but to be doing that across the continent, very, very impressive. You'll obviously say that it's an inferior league now, La Liga, probably, but he's been sensational. So it's tight. Salah's been superb, like I said. Far and away our highest rated player in the Premier League. For what it's worth, his rating of 8.07 this season would be enough to rank 4th of the highest rated seasons that we've ever had in the Premier League. The highest being Luis Suarez, when he scored 31 goals and 12 or 14 assists, I think. But yeah, Salah's 4th behind Suarez, Drogba and Fabregas. So yeah, playing pretty well. And it's got a pretty good fixture this weekend, hasn't he, to keep that up? Let's be fair.
Yeah, looks like he does. And let's not forget Nations League winner Karim Benzema as well. Let's give him his full title. Liverpool have a few absentees for the game. Alisson and Fabinho look like they're going to be out on their return from international duty. Trent Alexander-Arnold might be back, but Thiago and Diogo Jota are doubts with injuries. And that means that Roberto Firmino might come in, Jonathan. I mean, this is a chance for him, of course, to kind of restake his claim to be the third musketeer in that front line. But Jota has probably gone above him now in the pecking order. Do you think his days are numbered? Maybe not only as a Liverpool first choice player, but maybe as a Liverpool player altogether. I mean,
I think it's clearly true that he's now below Jota in if there is such a thing as a first 11 anymore, then he's probably not in it. Does that mean his days are numbered? I don't know. I mean, I think that depends very much on him, on whether he's happy to be a slightly more bit part player. I guess it depends as well on whether there's a sense he can fill in the two wide forward roles. I mean, I think Liverpool have got a problem with that. Certainly come January with the Cup of Nations when they'll probably lose both Mane and Salah. I guess Jota can play wide and Firmino through the middle, so that is something they can do. Liverpool are obviously not as rich as the other sort of top 4 teams, and have to be a bit more careful budget wise. Is the point at which they think, we have to cash in on him, or we can't afford his wages, we have to reinvest that elsewhere, possibly. But I mean, he had a difficult season last season, I think it's fair to say, but he's only 29. There's no reason to completely write him off. And, we're in a world where you don't just have 11 players. You need the squad. And he's clearly somebody who works very well with, or can work very well with Salah and Mane. So I think it'd be premature to write him off just yet.
Martin, we've got a Who Scored bet builder for this one.
We do indeed, yeah, and it's pretty juicy if I do say so myself, and a nice boost from Bet Victor for this one. So it starts off with Salah. and it's Mo Salah to score 2 or more goals against Watford. He's got 8 goals in 6 games against Watford. So pretty good record, and obviously, like we've said, in flying form right now. We've got a booking, and it's Emmanuel Dennis, which might seem like a strange one given he's a wide forward, but he's been booked in 4 of his last 5 league games. He's been lashing out a fair bit. He's not the most sort of disciplined player, so he's a very long odds to be carded. So that's the leg of the bet, so to speak, that really boosts this. So it's Salah to score 2+ goals, Dennis to be carded, and Liverpool to have 8+ corners. They'd had eight or more corners in all of their games up until the City game, which you can understand that they would drop far below that figure. They've had exactly 11 corners in all 3 of their away games. So Salah, 2+ goals, Dennis carded, Liverpool 8+ corners. It's been boosted from 51-1 to 66-1. And with most leading competitors, it is around the 50-1 mark. So there's a big difference there, a really nice boost. So yeah, early kickoff on TV. It's definitely one I'll be getting into. But obviously, if you do have a flutter on it, please gamble responsibly. We'll put the links to the bets in the description and out on social as we usually do.
Jonathan Moss on the whistle, who's gone 3, 4 and a red, 2 and 3 so far this season. So he's getting the cards out, it's fair to say. And hopefully Emmanuel Dennis will continue his yellow streak. Score predictions time. Jonathan, what are you going for?
3-0 Liverpool.
I'm the same. Martin?
Full house.
No way. Wow.
Yeah,
okay.
full house.
Well, that's, I mean, can we add that to the bet builder? Really?
Should have got that.
3-0 to Liverpool all round here.
So hang on, just to clarify, George, these are your predictions or these are Dan's predictions passed on through you?
No, these are my predictions. I own these. Sadly.
Dan is going to inherit them though, and I don't think he can really complain given his form in the predictions.
Jonathan, don't pretend that you didn't text me before and say, "Can you do really bad predictions?" just to negatively impact Dan's score, and then claim here that you haven't done that at all. Yeah, I was
really
Watford.
don't
Did I not make that clear?
Really don't need anything underhand to beat Dan. That's just not an issue. That would be a complete waste of corruption.
Time now for just a minute, and coming to Jonathan first. Your first game, Jonathan, is Aston Villa versus Wolves.
Yeah, these are 2 teams. I feel like I say this about Wolves every week, but I just don't understand them at the minute. So if you look at an expected points table, they're 8th in the league, and that they started the season playing pretty well but not getting results. You think of the Manchester United game in particular, really struggled to score goals, but they have won 3 of the last 4, admittedly only against Watford, Southampton and Newcastle. But I think there are signs of Hwang and Jimenez starting to form quite a useful partnership up front. I think the fact that they are repairing causes defences problems because they're not used to playing against a strike duo. So I think a lot of centre-backs now, one marks and one covers behind. If you've got 2 forwards against you, I think that can be very difficult. But Villa equally, I find pretty hard to understand because I've seen them be very, very good. With Chelsea, they were good despite losing. Obviously, won at United. But then they were really poor at Spurs when I was actually at the game. I was very disappointed in them. So with a sense of slight confusion, I'm going to go for Villa to win this 2-0.
So 2-0 to Villa there for Jonathan. I'm going 1-0 to Villa. And Villa fan, Martin?
Well, it's WhoScored's prediction, and it is a more cautious 1-1 draw.
1-1, the emotional hedge there from Martin in the corner. Martin, over to you now for Leicester versus Manchester United.
Yeah, all eyes will be on 2 strikers with a combined age of 70 at the King Power Stadium, with Jamie Vardy back in form and Cristiano Ronaldo certain to return to the starting lineup. The former has 6 goals already this season, none of which have come from the penalty spot, and is just 1 shy of the 7 he scored from open play last season. Fresh from a 10th international hat-trick, Ronaldo will be vying to close the gap to Vardy in the scoring charts, with both players boasting an identical WhoScored rating this season to date. Just for what it's worth, if you fancy both to score, we have actually had that boosted, and it's up to 6-1 for both of those players to score in that game, so there'll be interest in that. Solskjaer doesn't have a huge amount left to lean on, but his Premier League away record has perhaps kept him secure in his job to now, and he'll be relying on it again. After back-to-back home games without a win in the league, a trip to Leicester is perhaps now a favourable fixture following a tough start for the Foxes. Brendan Rodgers has distanced himself from the Newcastle job, but after 2 near misses at Champions League qualification, it does appear as though he may have taken Leicester as far as they can go. The Foxes' struggles at home stretch back to last season. Only Burnley have suffered more defeats of teams still in the top flight than Leicester since the start of last season with 10. They'll be without key man Wilfred and Diddy in midfield, while former United defender Johnny Evans is a doubt. United will be without both Maguire and Varane, though Rashford is nearing a return and could make the bench. So we are going, due to those defensive issues at United, we're going for 2-2 in this game.
2-2, a thriller at Leicester. I'm going for 2-0 to Manchester United, an away win. I think that Leicester's downward trend is looking pretty ropey, especially with United's away records. Jonathan?
I'm splitting the difference and saying 2-1 to United.
2-1 to Manchester United. No love there for Leicester. Manchester City against Burnley now for you, Jonathan.
Yeah, these are two teams who I think have played better than results have suggested so far. So let's start with Burnley. 3 draws, 4 defeats in the leagues, no wins. They had a similarly poor start last season, still survived. But I think certainly against Leeds and Leicester, they probably could have got more. Having said that, if you're drawing 0-0 against Norwich, you maybe do have problems. But they're 4.16 points below their expected points. City are also 2.57 points below their expected points. City at home it's feast or famine this season. They've scored 6 twice, they've scored 5 twice, and the other game they drew 0-0 with Southampton. So that possibly is a sense, or is an indication that they should have bought a striker in the summer. But that's not necessarily the way Guardiola plays. This has been 5-0. This game, the last 4 times it's been played, one of them in the FA Cup. Burnley haven't won away against Manchester City since 1963. And I sort of fancy that to continue. So I'm going to say City to win 4-1, while acknowledging Burnley are probably a little bit better than their league position suggests.
City to win 4-1 for you. City to win 4-0 for me. Martin?
Yeah, we've got 4-0 as well.
Oh, we're all in agreement today. It's a very friendly, very friendly show. Let's try and disagree with this next one. Next up, we have got Martin on Norwich versus Brighton.
Not sure we'll be disagreeing on Norwich versus Brighton, but we'll see. Norwich picked up their first point of the season at Burnley ahead of the break, but need a home win to properly kickstart their season. They're still looking for a goal from anywhere besides Teemu Pukki thus far, who broke Jari Litmanen's all-time scoring record for Finland during the break. New signings from the Bundesliga, Josh Sargent and Milo Rashica, have been poor in the league so far, but late addition Matthias Norman does look a strong one in midfield alongside Billy Gilmore. Brighton made a very smart signing of their own in Marc Cucurella and have what will surely be their first choice wing-backs available now following the return of Tariq Lamptey. Yves Bissouma is on bail, having been arrested last week, but will surely continue to miss out, and the Seagulls have looked a little flat in his absence. It was a little like the Brighton of old against Arsenal. They controlled the game but hit the target with just 2 of 21 shots. Brighton won both meetings between the two when Norwich were last in the top flight without conceding a goal. Trossard scored in both matches and has made a strong start to this season. By contrast, Neil Maupay has played more games against Norwich without scoring than any other team in his career, with 7, which is a very small crumb of comfort for the Canaries, who haven't picked up as much as a point at Carrow Road in their last 8 top flight games. So we are going 2-1 to Brighton.
Yeah, I think I sometimes try and share my bets with my Twitter followers, and I think my tip of Norwich top promoted club at 11-4 might be one of the worst bets I've ever had in my whole life. I'm going Brighton 2-0 for this one. Jonathan?
2-1 to Brighton.
2-1 to Brighton. Again, not too much
jeopardy. This is very tedious.
Not too much jeopardy in these ones. Southampton versus Leeds. Jonathan, over to you.
These are two teams, I think, with idiosyncratic styles, and when you get that, it's always, I think, worth looking at previous meetings. So last season, Leeds won the 2 games 2-0 and 2-0 at St Mary's, 3-0 at Elland Road. So that might indicate a comfortable afternoon for them. However, both sides, I think, have struggled at the start of the season. Leeds got their first win last game, which is only 1-0, only against Watford. Did need a slightly dodgy disallowed goal, although they did dominate the game. Southampton 4 draws and 3 defeats so far. They've really struggled for goals. Their only goals so far have been 2 Ward-Prowse penalties and Ward-Prowse suspended, and an own goal, and then the goal they got from Armstrong in the opening day of the season at Everton. Leeds, I think, have also struggled a bit for creativity in goals. Rafinha, they're very dependent on. He's got 3 of their 7 goals. Played very well for Brazil. A lot of injuries as well. Bamford out, Phillips a big doubt, Koch, Ayling, both ruled out. So I'm going to take the coward's way out and say 1-1.
1-1. I'm going 2-1 to the away team, 2-1 to Leeds for me. Martin?
Yeah, well, 1-0 to Leeds. So A slight change from Jonathan, at least.
A slight change, yeah. I mean, we haven't had
building.
a single game yet where hasn't been a single game where both teams have had a predicted win so far, which is a bit of a shame. But maybe we'll get there. Could it be this one? I think it's unlikely. Even the most optimistic of Brentford fans. We'll see. Brentford-Chelsea, Martin, over to you.
Yeah, having beaten Arsenal and drawn with Liverpool already, Brentford are buzzing in their packed-out new stadium and will be relishing the visit of the league leaders. This will be their 4th London derby of the season already, and they've picked up 7 points from the previous 3. They will, however, be without key midfielder Vitaly Anelt and Shandon Baptiste in the middle ground, while Christopher Ayer is a doubt for the Bees. Chelsea have a number of fitness concerns of their own, but the likes of Reece James, Antonio Rudiger, N'Golo Kante and Romelu Lukaku could all be fit, having withdrawn from international duty. Thiago Silva did travel to Brazil, however, and will miss out. Given he'll be in action in the early hours of Friday, so Trevor Chalobah should continue at the back. One man that hasn't had much opportunity so far is Saul Niguez, and apparent cast-offs Ruben Loftus-Cheek and Ross Barkley both favoured against Southampton. The Blues may be top of the table heading into the weekend, but haven't been entirely convincing of late in doing so. Lukaku was without a goal in 5 appearances for the club, with 8 of his 17 Premier League shots coming in his opening game against Arsenal. They can always look elsewhere for goals, however, with 7 in the league already from defenders alone. That's more than Tottenham and Arsenal have managed in total. We are going for a narrow Chelsea win, and it 2-1 to Chelsea.
2-1 to Chelsea. I was at Brentford's 2-1 win over West Ham, and they were incredibly impressive. Both the players and the away fans who made some racket when that goal flew in. As I say, I'm pretty on board with Brentford this season, but I've still gone for a 1-0 away win and what I think will be a tight game. Jonathan?
2-1 to Chelsea.
2-1 to Chelsea. Well, at least, no one's gone for a big Chelsea win, so that'll inevitably be what transpires. Everton versus West Ham. The last one for you, the last one for just a minute, Jonathan.
Yeah, I think this is an interesting one. 2 sides who have got aspirations to break into that sort of top 6. West Ham obviously did get into Europe last season. I think Everton desperate to get in, given the investments they've made. Both have started the season pretty well. Everton 4 wins, 2 draws from 7 games. West Ham with 3 wins and 2 draws. West Ham only failed to score at Southampton. Everton's only defeat was at Villa in that slightly odd game where they suddenly lost 3-0 from nowhere. A lot of injuries for Everton though this game. No Calvert-Lewin, no Richarlison, no Andre Gomez, no Iwobi, no Dine, no Delph. Kufal could be out for West Ham with a groin problem. Both these games last season were 1-0 to the away side. But I think maybe the interesting thing here is look at the managers, both in a sense throwbacks to sort of 10, 15 years ago. Moyes' record against Benitez is pretty poor. Only won 3 and drawn 3 out of 17 meetings. And his record against Everton is poor as well. Only 2 wins out of 11. 1 draw and 8 defeats. So I'm going to go 2-1 to Everton.
2-1 Everton. Martin?
1-1.
I've also gone for 1-1. What a shame. Again, at West Ham on Saturday, there were loads of fans around us who were moaning that it was back to the Allardyce days of football. And then again, as soon as they started knocking the ball around the back, it was get it forwards, which you've got to love from the same people. But yeah, 1-1 for me in that one too. So that brings us to the close of just a minute where we all basically agreed on every single game. On to the Saturday, 3 p.m. treble now, where each of us will tip up one bet from each of the games. Martin, why don't you give us the first leg of the treble?
Yeah, I've gone for Leeds to win, just because I thought it was really good value there. The single market on that is 15-8 Leeds to win with Bet Victor. Like Jonathan said in his preview, they won both games against Southampton last season without conceding. Got that crucial win ahead of the break. They were dominant in that game without needing to be excellent. And Southampton is just I worry for them a little bit because it's not a short-term problem now for Saints. So yeah, I'm going Leeds to win for the Who Scored leg. Leeds
to win, Jonathan.
I've gone for the City Burnley game. As I mentioned in the last section, City have won this game 5-0 last 4 times it's been played. The 2 before that were 4-1 and 3-0. So a comfortable City win seems likely. So I've gone City minus 2.5, which you should be able to get around about evens.
City minus 2.5, around about the even money mark. Now, if you told me that I'd be coming on a podcast at the beginning of the season and tipping up Manchester United at even money at Leicester, I'd have called you a madman. But that is where we are. That's my tip here. Not because much to do with Manchester United, although I do think the injuries of Maguire and Varane have maybe boosted the price a little bit more, because the Lindelof Bailly duo, whilst obviously not as good as those two, is still, in my opinion, ultimately good enough to be a decent defensive force against the Leicester side, who just look completely all at sea to me at the moment. I think they look very poor. I think we've seen this Brendan Rodgers arc before, where after a big high, suddenly it drops off quite quickly, and the rumours of him to Newcastle maybe show that he might be on his way out as well. So I think, given United's away records, they should have enough to see off Leicester at even money. So there, your treble for you there. Manchester United to win, Manchester City -2.5, and Leeds to win at Southampton.
Yeah, and for what it's worth, original price for BetVictor for that treble was 21-2. They've boosted it nicely to 14-1. That treble, so I think that's a really nice price as well. So yeah, same as always. Links in the description, and gamble responsibly if you get on it.
The BetVictor lads cannot believe they're able to boost Manchester United at Leicester. They're delighted and giving us a massive price for it. Now time to check in with our friends at BetVictor, and delighted to be able to speak to Sam Boswell about all the new markets after the news from Newcastle and their takeover. You've got the enjoyable task of trying to work out what is going to happen up in the northeast in the next couple of weeks, in the next couple of months. What markets have you got for us?
Yeah, well, in the outright markets, obviously there's always an initial shake-up whenever you get kind of significant news. They're now 1-9 to finish in the bottom half. They were a little bit shorter than that before. Be interesting to see what happens. Bottom three finished, though. They have drifted now to 2-1. They were a bit shorter than that, going into pre-takeover mode, if we can sort of describe it as that. But the most interesting market that we have around Newcastle is, as ever, the next manager market. Now, these are always in danger of going a little bit out of date by the time we've spoken about them, but we have a solid favourite at this point in time of Frank Lampard, who's 11-4 with ourselves to take the job. Would be a fascinating appointment for me. Not the sort of manager that I thought they'd be going for, if I'm completely honest. Favre next in the betting at 6-1. Plenty of talk around him. Conte as well was an early front runner, 8-1. But we've had so many names already linked. Eddie Howe was favourite at one point. He's now 16-1 and looks very unlikely to get the job. Brendan Rodgers, speculation that he's potentially turning down the role if he was offered it. He's a 10-1 shot. Steven Gerrard, 8-1. There's so many you can make cases for. If I had to throw a name out there that I thought would be potentially interesting, albeit quite expensive to get out of his contract, Graham Potter at Brighton's a 25-1 shot. He's a manager that plenty of people have got a lot of time for. I think he could be a man to build a long-term project. It's a fascinating job. Any strong fancies from yourself about who should be appointed to replace Steve Bruce?
You've taken the words out of my mouth. I'm of the believer. I'm fully into Potterable. I think that any club who has top six aspirations and wants to build something for the future should be investing in a manager that I think is destined to create something pretty special. It might be at Brighton. Brighton are pretty ambitious themselves, but certainly if I was a Newcastle fan, I would want someone like Potter who brings not only a certain style and a track record in bringing through young players, but also I think is geared towards some success in the future. You mentioned there how many names are already in the hat. I've been following this market pretty closely since the takeover news went through, and it feels like there've already been about 5 or 6 favourites, even in this early stage. How much action are you seeing? How much interest is there in these kind of next manager markets?
It's one of those markets that tends to spike and fluctuate pretty quickly off the back of news, speculation, and everything like that. There's a lot of people that will have an angle to it. For example, you might consider the fact that Steve Bruce is a pretty unpopular guy in the Northeast. For all that people seem surprised he's likely to take the game against Spurs, if you thought potentially that the owners wanted to buy a bit more time, there'd be plenty of people suggesting someone like Graham Jones and the backroom staff may well be considered a safe pair of hands to get them through the season, keep them up. He'll get a little bit of money to spend in January where they might well have somebody suggesting who he'll be buying. That could be an angle a few people would play. It is interesting. Some of the old classic names come out, but they very rarely get back significantly. We've got Kevin Keegan in the market, but I think you'd have to be thinking pretty left field if they're going to bring him out of what's been a significantly long retirement. Alan Shearer, he's not going to take the job, is he? He's a 33-1 shot. I can't see that myself at all. Zidane, 25-1, not for me. I think you've got to try and think logically here. I am convinced Newcastle will want to appoint someone with Premier League experience as well. It's a huge job and they need to get it right. It's very interesting. I actually personally think they might have a kind of two-staged approach with a short-term option now with a look towards perhaps a longer term future if they are going to be challenging for titles in a couple of years. But what an interesting debate we're going to have. We will just very quickly touch on the game they've got on Sunday, I should say, of course, which is conveniently the 4:30 game on Sky, which is great. So we'll all be able to watch the drama. Steve Bruce likely to take the team 12-5 Newcastle to get the home win and sort of enjoy, I suppose, a bit of a bounce factor off this positivity. 5-2 the draw, 21-20 Spurs to get the away win and really spoil the party. Boosts on site include Spurs to score a penalty enhanced to 4-1. Harry Kane, he looked very out of sorts, didn't he, for England this week? 5-4 to score anytime boosted. The trader's going to try and take him on. Loads of other specials on the site as per. We'd always encourage people to gamble responsibly, but really looking forward to seeing the next chapter in the Newcastle saga. I've got to say, I'm already a little bit tired of my Newcastle supporting friends' endless WhatsApps about Lionel Messi likely to be coming at the end of the season and all sorts of other nonsense. So I wouldn't personally mind if Spurs got 3 points over them, just to bring them all back down to earth a little bit.
Sam, you mentioned a short-term appointment, Premier League experience. Are you, without saying it, advocating a return of Big Sam Allardyce to Newcastle?
I don't want to get lynched by my Newcastle supporting friend, so we better park the Big Sam factor. But hey, listen, this is the Premier League. Anything can happen. I was scrolling through a few of the shouts we had on social media, and Marcelo Bielsa to take the job. He's a 40-1 shot. I think he'd be a great appointment, but I just can't see it. There's so many different angles there. We have priced up a bit cheekily Klopp 66-1 to take the job, or Pep Guardiola if he's going to jump for the bigger bank balance and the bigger bank sheet. He's 66-1, but I can't see them either. It's going to be fascinating. Who knows what will happen, George? All I'll say is best of luck to the Geordies. They've had a rough last 14 years under Mike Ashley, so I begrudgingly think they deserve a decent owner, but I'm sure, knowing Newcastle, the drama won't end.
Fascinating stuff. Look forward to seeing what happens. Thanks very much to Sam Boswell from Bet Victor. Any football fan will be delighted about Mike Ashley moving on from Newcastle, but the circumstances are not as easy as that, are they?
No. I mean, the idea that Saudi Arabia is distinct from the Public Investment Fund of Saudi Arabia is nonsense. It's a fig leaf so that the Premier League don't have to answer some difficult questions about Saudi Arabia's human rights record, about its women's rights record, about its gay rights record, about all manner of issues within Saudi Arabia. They can pretend it's nothing to do with the PIF, even though Mohammed bin Salman is the chair, the leader of Saudi Arabia is the chair of that body, even though that body was contains a number of figures who were instrumental in ending the piracy issue, which indirectly was what stopped the takeover going through last year. So it's hugely problematic. But if you can put that to one side, and a lot of Newcastle fans seem to have been able to put that to one side, they should be expecting significant investment, and that I can see is very exciting. And so I imagine the atmosphere on Sunday will be euphoric, and that I think often in the short term can mean a lot in terms of results performance.
I mean, what level of investment do you think we are going to see? I mean, is there a chance that in 5-10 years Newcastle United are going to be a Man City? Can the investment even dwarf the likes of Manchester City, given the wealth of the owners?
Well, it could do, in that Saudi Arabia's resources are, if you add together the other 90, the assets of the other 19 owners of Premier League clubs, Saudi Arabia's is more than 3 times greater than the sum of all of the 19. So in that sense, they can buy whatever they want. How you do that while complying with financial fair play, I don't know. Whether financial fair play has any teeth, I don't know. And this is one of the problems when states get involved, that essentially, how can the Premier League possibly, or UEFA or whoever, possibly take legal action against the state of Saudi Arabia? If there's an appeal, it can be dragged on and dragged on and dragged on because one side is much, much, much richer than the other, and therefore is essentially ungovernable. So I don't know. I've got no idea what they'll try and do, but potentially they could just buy everything.
Potentially they could buy everything. Martin, that brings us nicely onto the next topic, which is let's talk about who they are going to buy, because there have been rumours around Haaland, there have been rumours around Mbappe, more sensible ones maybe around the likes of Philippe Coutinho. We all think back to the Manchester City early days, and when Robinho, the exotic Robinho suddenly turned up at Manchester City. I remember it was just one of the before this age of clubs suddenly being able to buy themselves success. It was bizarre to see. Who do we think are the possible targets? Who do you think are the likely players who might turn up at Newcastle in January?
I think if they had any sense about them, they wouldn't be looking. I'm not sure this is the case, but they wouldn't be looking at this shiny new attacker. It's probably the least of their worries at the moment. Actually, when they've got everyone fit, a front three or some sort of setup of Almiron, Wilson, and St. Maximin is pretty strong. What they don't have is a good defence, and more pertinently, in my opinion, a good barrier to that defence. The middle of midfield is really, really weak, in my opinion. So that's what I'd be looking at addressing first. I think it's quite timely. Gini Wijnaldum coming out this week and saying that he's not particularly happy at PSG. There might be an emotional connection there. To bring someone like that back, whether that's the sort of character that he is, and he's willing to sort of step out of European football and go back to Newcastle, who knows? But that's what you're going to be questioning with all these sort of links, aren't you? So he might be an interesting one, but I think he's not really, maybe not the defensive protection that they need. If I was trying to pick out a sensible signing, I'd be looking at someone like Ismail Benasser at AC Milan, who can't get a game. Very good young defensive midfielder, carries the ball very well. Someone like Dennis Zakaria, Gladbach. I just think they need a shield to that defence at the moment, and they do need to strengthen the defence. But like I said, I think there'll be a clamour to sign, like you say, a Haaland or an Mbappe or even a Coutinho, an attacking player, and that's definitely not the first port of call, in my opinion. They need to shore up that defence because they are still in a relegation battle, and they will be. Probably all season, I'd say, even after whatever they do in January. I don't think they're going to stay clear of that threat for too long.
I enjoyed the debate on a certain national radio station earlier with a pundit saying that Steve Bruce was the best man for a job for a relegation battle. Well, I think the reason why he's so capable in a relegation battle is because his teams are often in them. Whereas if you get a better manager who will steer you clear of a relegation battle, then they probably won't have to manage in relegation battles. It was interesting that you mentioned Wijnaldum as well, because I was just trying to think if there have been many players who would return to a former club as such different players in terms of the way they play and the positions that they play. And then I remembered that Cristiano Ronaldo returned to Manchester United last month, and that was kind of a null point. Jonathan,
Ashley
anyone
Young,
you'd like to see?
Ashley Young at Villa.
Ashley Young, that's a great call as well. It's the year for that, clearly. Jonathan, anyone that you think Newcastle should be looking to sign in Jan?
I think that's really difficult to name specifics, but the whole thing is there's going to be at least a year of incongruities of things not quite fitting. Okay, to start with, who's the long-term manager? Who are they going to get long-term? Because I suspect none of the realistic candidates will want to go there now. I think probably Bruce will go just because there's so much of a demand for a fresh start. So who's sort of realistically available who they could get as a sort of almost as a stopgap? Well, probably Eddie Howe looks the most likely. So then you're thinking, well, okay, which players who would actually be worthwhile signing are going to want to join Eddie Howe's Newcastle in the relegation battle? And you suddenly think, God, we're going to have to pay them an absolute fortune to come. And that's going to set the wage structure all over the place. They've got nearly 2.5 months till they can buy anybody. So, I mean, you say, I think you're doing a trawl of who's not happy at the moment. Who can we get who is so miserable where they are? They'll come and join us for 6 months. And I think maybe then you do think, well, maybe Wijnaldum, maybe Coutinho, maybe, I don't know, something like Eden Hazard where it just hasn't worked out. But the other problem they've got is their entire scouting network, and you can ask all kinds of questions about whether it's any good anyway, but it's just not set up for that level of wealth. It's set up to be looking at players you can get for 15, 20 million maybe, at getting the likes of Almiron or Joe Willock. It's not set up for big stars who are going to be playing in Europe. So I think it's going to be a long process with probably quite a lot of bad mistakes made on the way, and I think that's an inevitable part of that process.
Yeah, I was going to say, it feels to me like they need to get their version of Chicky Begiristan, who's signed by Manchester City, in order to change the way they looked at players and change the way they scouted, because that's got to be
and Brian Marwood has been linked, and he obviously has experience of doing that at City, so yeah, that does make sense.
Yeah, James Tarkowski.
They could do with the keeper as well, who isn't injured every second. We go through that every week, but yeah, they could do with a goalkeeper who stays injury free, which seems like it should be an easy thing to find. But yeah,
I mean, the strongest link has been James Tarkowski, who seems like a far too sensible signing for all the rumours. A guy who has Premier League quality, who can play at the back in a way that we maybe don't see as often at Burnley, who isn't happy there and his contract is running out. So, if those rumours are true, then it suggests that somebody making the decisions isn't being too blinded by the dollar signs at this early stage. Let's talk about Spurs, though, their opponents on the day. I mean, we've mentioned Harry Kane there, Martin, but to what extent, are we now seeing that a lot of obits have been written about Harry Kane early in seasons before and been made to look very foolish? But at this stage, I mean, Son is the main man at Spurs, isn't he, at the moment?
Yeah, and I think there's something in that sort of, well, Kane doesn't start the season well, so it's all right. Is that all right? Is that an excuse? Is that fine that he doesn't start seasons well? I don't really think it is. I think that's pertinent as to why Son arguably is a more important player to them, because he is less susceptible to these sort of drops in form, I'd say. He's less injury prone. And yeah, certainly against Tottenham, I was at the game as well, Jonathan. I don't know why we didn't meet. I think Dan was at the game as well. So
I wasn't.
Should have. No, George wasn't there. But yeah, no, he was excellent in that game. And yeah, I looked at the team's record with and without both players, because certainly Kane has had his injury problems over the years. So if you look back to 2018-19, Kane's missed 25 games for Tottenham, and their win rate actually increased by 2% in the games that he missed. They've always actually played pretty well without him. Son is usually filled in up front very well. By comparison, when Son is missing 28 games in the same time frame, their win rate is down 10%. So yeah, quite a big difference. I think their ability to actually get Son to sign a new contract was probably overlooked in the summer. I think a lot of people, because it was amidst all the sort of Kane wants to leave talk. So getting him to sign was quite a coup in a way. Signed a new 4-year contract. So that was really, really good business by Tottenham. Maybe even more so than I think definitely even more so than keeping hold of a player that doesn't want to be there. And Jonathan made a good point last time out that I think they were just worried about losing their sort of status of a top level club if they lose that world class striker. But you can build a better team by cashing in for that sort of money. So yeah, I think it's definitely an argument to say Son is more important right now.
Jonathan, what did you make of Spurs in that game against Villa? Because I'm coming to you for the unbiased view, but it took me by surprise, I guess, from what we've seen so far from Nuno's Spurs, that they were able to deal with Villa in their current guys and win the game in the way that they did.
I found it quite a hard game to write about, because at half time I was sort of thinking, this is terrible. These are two really bad teams. How is this sort of a mid-table Premier League game? And then, I was, to be honest, I was really disappointed in Villa. Having seen what I'd seen in the previous 3 or 4 weeks, I've been expecting Villa to be good. I've been expecting Tottenham to be under pressure. And what I don't know is whether Villa just had a really off day, or whether we should give Tottenham credit for stopping them from playing. And I think that kind of thing is very, very hard to tell. And you only sort of work that out as the season goes on, whether Tottenham's disruptiveness was the cause of the poverty at first half. But then the second half didn't make any sense either. I just thought Tottenham, although they created a lot of chances, were weirdly open. And when Villa equalised, I sort of thought, well, I couldn't really see Tottenham then getting the win. And of course, they get it 4 minutes later, and Son was absolutely critical in that. Where I think that's where you see Son's value. So yeah, it was a game that left me slightly baffled by both sides. What I would say about Tottenham is that no side is outperforming their expected points by as much as them, and I think that is a really worrying sign. So now I've been to 2 Tottenham games this season. I saw them beat City and I saw them beat Villa. And if those were the only 2 games I'd seen, I was basing everything on just those two matches. Yeah, they're fine. They're well organised in midfield. They may be lacking a little bit of coherence and fluency up front, but fundamentally, good solid team with a couple of good forwards. They'll win. They'll win a lot more than they lose. But then you look at the other 5 games they've played, and they don't fit that pattern at all. So, I guess once again, I'm saying I don't really know.
Martin, hopefully you know a bit more about what's going to happen here, or at least predict with a who scored bet builder for the game.
Yeah, I think the point Jonathan made there about those 2 games that he has been to, sort of a trend of both, is that Oliver Skipp has started in both games alongside Højbjerg, and certainly given them more of a platform to build on. And I think his inclusion or his return at the expense of Dele Alli dropped out, who I think has been poor. So he's been very good, but he is in the cards a lot so far this season. He's been booked in his last 3 games and in 4 of 7 league appearances as well. So I'll start there. Oliver Skipp to be carded is the first leg of the bet. And I'll move on to another cards market. We've got both teams to receive 2+ cards. That's played out in the last 6 meetings at Newcastle between the sides. So both teams get 2+ cards. We have gone for Harry Kane to score, to break his duck. If he's not going to score against this Newcastle defence, then who is he going to score against? He's got 4 goals. He's got 4 goals in his last 2 away games at Newcastle. For what it's worth, he was poor. He was very poor in the international break, but I thought there were signs against Villa that he was looking slightly better. He should have scored. Still looked a bit rusty in front of goal, but he did have a really nice back heel to Lascelles, so that he should have scored. Nice link up there, so he looked a little bit brighter. So we're going Kane to score, both teams to score. We do think Newcastle will get a goal. There'll be, like Jonathan says, a euphoric atmosphere there. So again, both teams to score. That's panned out in 13 of the last 15 games at Newcastle between the two. So it's usually a high scoring game, so hopefully an entertaining game. So we've got Kane to score, both teams to score, Skipp carded, and both teams to receive 2+ cards. And that's been boosted from 20 to 1 to 25 to 1 by BetVictor.
Great stuff. And Martin, what's your score prediction for this one?
We've gone for 2-1 to Tottenham.
2-1 Spurs. Jonathan?
2-1 Newcastle.
Here we go.
And I've gone for 1-0 Spurs. So finally, a bit of jeopardy here. 1-0 Spurs. Sorry to go against the goals. I mean, I must say, seems hopeful that a game between Steve Bruce and Nuno is going to be an open, entertaining affair. But fingers crossed.
Bruce is capable of being. They're really attacking at Watford. Yeah, there's this weird. I've heard loads of people say it this season that Bruce is so cagey. Have you actually watched them? They're just crap.
Yeah. Certainly, I think that's part of his problem.
Graham Jones came in, I think they've definitely changed their approach.
But I don't think Bruce is sort of necessarily defensive. I mean, obviously he can be defensive, but having experienced a lot of them at Sunderland, there's games when we seem to every game at Sunderland for a while seemed to be 5-2 one way or the other.
Never saw many 5-2s at Bruce's Villa, did he, Martin?
No, he did not. No. I don't want to talk about it.
Last game of the weekend, and it's Monday Night Football. It is Arsenal who host Crystal Palace. And Martin, I mean, I've been surprised. I think everyone's been a bit surprised how well Patrick Vieira has started his Premier League managerial campaign. I'm sure he would have eyes on the job of Mikel Arteta at some stage in the future in the Arsenal dugout, given his reputation and his playing career there. What exactly has he done? What has he changed about Palace? And you can't just say everything.
It is nearly everything. It was a bit stale at Palace, like sort of last season and maybe the last few seasons under Hodgson. He did a good job ultimately in keeping them in the division, but they needed that change. And I think the speed with which Vieira has enacted that has been impressive. The stylistic change has been clear to see. They've last season they ranked 18th for possession, just under 43%. They're over 50% this season, so that puts them in 10th. So that's a big rise, and they've had a pretty tough run of fixtures as well. They've played some big teams. I think they've played 5 of last season's top 7. So they obviously had a tough start against Chelsea, but have built since then and picked up some good results. So possessions up, pass accuracy 17th last season, 11th this season. So they're big changes, and you can point to the fact that it's a small sample size. But like I said, if you look at the teams that they've faced, it's an impressive leap. More shots, actually fewer shots on target. That's the one area that they need to work on quite drastically. They're 19th for shots on target, so quite wasteful in front of goal. But shots conceded are actually significantly down as well. So defensively, they look more sound. So yeah, it's all looking quite rosy at Palace after a tough start. And I think maybe 2 games in, a lot of people were saying they could be looking like a relegation candidate again this season. But I don't think many people will see them as that now. I think they'll have aspirations of mid-table, if not a top half finish. I think that's going to be a sort of tight race this season. I think there's a lot of teams that you can sort of throw a blanket over in that discussion.
Yeah, it feels like it could be an awkward one for Arsenal, because if Palace do turn up and play the way they played against Spurs, for example, I think a lot of Arsenal fans will be looking at the Palace dugout, wondering if they've got the right former midfielder in their ranks. Jonathan, what is for both clubs, I guess? I mean, of all the teams in the division, these are probably 2 of the clubs where realistic aspirations and ambitions for the season are the most up in the air. I mean, what do you think fans of Palace and what do you think fans of Arsenal can realistically hope for the campaign?
I mean, Arsenal, I guess if everything goes really well from now on, they could conceivably finish, say, 6th. They're unlikely to finish below, 14th if things go really badly wrong. I think realistically that 8th feels about right. I think they'll be scrapping out with your Villas, your West Hams, your Evertons for those sort of upper mid-table places. Palace, I mean, I was very sceptical of Palace. I just thought they'd changed too much too quickly. While sort of generally thinking the change they're making were the right changes, I just thought it was too sudden. But actually, it seems to work pretty well almost straight away. And they would be 9th on expected points, and it's not just that there's an improvement there, but I sort of think they're, from a fan point of view, they're playing much more exciting, attractive football. So I think if you're a realistic fan, you'd accept these things take time to bed in, and you wouldn't be expecting too much too soon. But I would have thought, sort of, if things go really well, maybe 9th, 8th. If things go badly, probably still avoiding relegation the way things look, so 15th, something like that. But I think 12th, say, is a perfectly reasonable place for them to sort of anticipate finishing.
Martin, what have we got for the Who Scored tip here?
So we've got both teams to score. It is a game that generally sees goals at both ends. That's played out in 6 of the last 7 meetings. And we've got Conor Gallagher to be carded. Only John McGinn has been carded more times in the Premier League since the start of last season than Gallagher, who's played significantly fewer games than McGinn as well. So he's got 13 bookings since the start of last season. Obviously, he's been a real success story for Palace this season. Looks really good. I think he's obviously had a lot of loans already and picked up sort of the points that he sort of learned at each club and combined them into one. He was sort of a goal-scoring midfielder at Charlton, more of a creator at Swansea. Then he was defensive midfielder at West Brom, and he sort of merged them all together, and he's become a really complete player. And I think Michael Elise had a really good impact last time out. It was the first we've seen of him. Eze isn't even back, so it's looking pretty positive. I think what they've done in the transfer window, the sort of age and profile of player that they've recruited, sets them up really nicely. And I think one thing you could possibly argue is that Vieira's made more of a sort of clear, positive tactical change than in 7 games than Arteta maybe has in 2 years. So yeah, I've gone a bit off topic there, but yeah, we our bet is for both teams to score. Like I said, 6 of the last 7 has seen both teams score, and Conor Gallagher to be carded, and that's been boosted to 5-1. So just a little sort of double. But yeah, a nice price, I think, for that.
Definitely a nice price. What's the Who Scored prediction?
What is the Who Scored prediction? That's a good question, George. 2-1 to Arsenal. No, sorry.
There you go. Caught you out. 2-1 Arsenal. Jonathan?
1-1.
And I've also gone for 1-1 for Dan. Just matching you up at every opportunity, Jonathan.
Weirdly negative when you're several points behind.
I'm taking the brown envelope after the recording. That brings this episode of the Edge of the Box podcast to a close. Thank you very much to both Martin and to Jonathan for joining us today. Same time next week, same time, same place. Do subscribe to the Who Scored YouTube channel and to the podcast as well to get all of these straight to you every week. Please make sure that you're gambling responsibly. We've given a few tips here, but we always recommend that you gamble only what you can afford to lose, and this is for 18 plus only too. Thank you very much to our sponsors Bet Victor for their boosts and their support in this podcast, and we'll speak to you again next week.